name's Chloe and welcome to my channel.
Just be me.
So I've been a YouTuber for about 6 years now. Whoa, what? And in that time, I have been asked thousands upon thousands of people globally about autism. Questions from people that are autistic themselves, questions from people that have autistic family members or friends, and people that have either never heard about autism or only have heard of the stereotypes of autism. Accessing information, although easier now than it once used to be, is still incredibly difficult. And finding answers that are written by actual autistic people instead of articles written by ableist companies and organizations that want to kill us remains even harder. I understand that autism is something that is still so stereotyped and something that not a whole lot of people know exactly the specifics on. Therefore, we have a lot of misinformation running around. Therefore, a lot of people remaining miseducated and completely misunderstanding about what autism actually is. This is because of the propaganda that these companies are spreading, because of falsely based media stereotypes, because of fear-mongering, because of clinical-based articles that don't actually speak for us. And overall, it creates this ideology that autism is something that it is not. And also, in turn, creates very, very odd, very, very strange questions and assumption about what autism is and can be. So I wanted to put out the feelers today. I went out to Instagram yesterday and I asked my followers, what is a question that you have always had about autism but have always been too scared to ask? And as usual, you guys came through. Very often when I make videos like this, I will answer the kind of stupid, strange, silly questions with sarcasm because it seems ridiculous to me that people could ever question things like this. However, in this video, I would like to remain that at a bare minimum. This is a no judgment zone. This is a place to genuinely get your questions answered about autism. We've got quite a few questions to get through today, so let's get started.
Now I'm the king of the swingers, oh, the jungle VIP. I've reached the top and had to stop, and that's what's bothering me.
Are you afraid that your kids might have autism and ADHD? Scared that they'll have it? No. In fact, when I was younger, I used to tell my parents that the only way I ever would have kids is if they were autistic. I vividly remember saying to my mum when she asked me, are you gonna have kids? And then I asked her, what's the likelihood that they're going to be autistic? And my mum, thinking that I was worried about having an autistic kid, was like, oh, probably not very likely. I looked her dead in the eye and was like, in that case, no, I don't want them. No. I've said this before, I'll say it again, I've got cancelled on Instagram for saying this. Neurotypicals are weird. You guys are strange. You guys do not make any sense. All of your social rules are absolute rubbish. None of them make any sense. If there was less of you guys would be so marginalized that it would make us look like absolutely nothing. Am I allowed to say that? I've worked with kids for a very, very long time. I used to own a company where I did princess parties and princess events. I worked as a drama teacher for some time, and I also did writing for the disabled education, and I was always so excited when there was a neurodivergent kid in my class because I was like, I get you, I know how to work with you, this is gonna be good. However, with that being said, what does scare me about the potential of having an autistic or otherwise disabled child would be the segregation that they're going to face because of them being disabled. I have absolutely no worries, no issues about having a disabled child. What my worry would be is how society treats them based on my own knowledge and own understanding of how society has treated me. Being neurodivergent in a neurotypical world is so terrifying and so difficult to work out. And as a child, it is one of the scariest things in the whole world. It was the hardest time of my life trying to grow up as a neurodivergent person in a neurotypical world and just not understanding. However, I do hope that in the future when I do have kids, the world has changed and that we do better understand neurodivergency and that the world is a more accommodating place for everyone, whether you're neurodivergent or not. Does stimming hurt? Typically, no, stimming doesn't hurt. In fact, it's the exact opposite. The entire idea of stimming is to do the opposite of hurt. Stimming refers to self-stimulatory behavior, and the entire core of its entire being is to be able to soothe and relax our bodies. The only time that stimming could potentially be harmful is if it's a negative stim. This includes self-harmful stims such as headbanging, biting, scratching, all of that sort of stuff. This tends to mainly happen if the non-harmful stims have been disencouraged or tried to be taken away by parents and therapists, or if you're in a meltdown situation when your entire being and all of your senses shut off and the only way that you can make sense of the world is by sometimes doing harmful stims. Replacing these stims instead with non-harmful behaviors can definitely make a world of difference. So stim away, let your kids stim. Stimming is good, stimming is positive, and stimming is natural, and it is not harmful whatsoever. When I'm writing a document, how should I refer to a person with autism? So many people have had it absolutely drilled into them that they are not allowed to use identity first, as in they are autistic language, and that they have to use they have autism person first language. I can't count the amount of teachers, educators, therapists, doctors, journalists, directors, producers that I've spoken to that when I refer to myself as an autistic person or when they refer to me as she has autism and I have quickly corrected them, they're like, whoa, you can't correct me on that. I know this because I went to school for this and they told me this. I've gotten messages from so many teachers saying, you preach about using identity first language, but we're not allowed to do that because that's bad and because we've been taught otherwise and we used to get a slap on the wrist if we did otherwise. I've spoken about this topic many times. I have got a couple of videos on it on my channel. I will link it somewhere around here so you guys can see why you need to use identity first language rather than person first language. But in short, person first language, they have autism, praises the stereotype that autism is a burden. It's something that we carry around. It's something which can and should be taken away from us. However, when we're saying autistic person, we're recognizing, affirming and validating that person's identity as an autistic individual. When it comes down to documents, when it comes down to reporting, when it comes down to being a teacher, a doctor, or whatever it is where you have been taught to say the opposite, it is incredibly important to listen to the community first. I don't care what your fancy textbooks say, I don't care what your professors and what your teachers said, you need to listen to the community. And the majority of the autistic community prefers the term identity first language. They are autistic. If I ever see an article or a journal entry or a group or an organization or a therapist that is using person first language, I will automatically not read it, not go to them, not talk to them, because I will automatically assume that they have never listened to autistic people's experience before and are choosing instead to look towards their own judgment, which in this case isn't helpful. If you are writing something to or about a specific autistic person and they tell you they personally identify with person first language, they have autism, then is when you can use person first language. However, in most instances, it is extremely important to use identity first. Is ASD hereditary? Short answer, maybe. Long answer, we don't really know. Autism does tend to run in families. For example, if you have a parent, a sibling, an auntie, an uncle, a grandparent who is autistic, there is a very likely chance that someone else in your family is also going to be autistic. The likelihood of autism in families which already have autistic people in them is definitely going to increase, but we don't necessarily know why, how, or what the percentage or likelihood of that hereditary intake is. Before you were diagnosed, did people ever suspect something else? So, fun fact, the first thing that they tested me for when they realized that there was something a little bit funky, a little bit different, a little bit not like the other girls going on about me, is brain damage from a horse kick. My English teacher was actually the person who said to my parents, hey, Chloe's a little bit different, Chloe's a little bit quirky, a little bit different. And the first thing that happened is that I went to the hospital and I got a CAT scan on my brain to see if one of the many accidents, many kicks to the head in my time of being an equestrian was the cause of why I was different. Turns out, no, I had not been viciously kicked in the head by my horse. I was just autistic. However, prior to that, there was never any suspicion of anything necessarily different. I have PTSD. I've had so since I was a child, and a lot of the PTSD symptoms in children are also very similar to the autism symptoms. So there was never any correlation that was going on that we were aware of. My parents were just into the assumption that all of the autistic traits that I had were just PTSD traits. So there was a couple of other things that we thought were going on, but overall, I'm autistic. What does high functioning really mean? This person is more capable of producing capitalistic value and appears normal to me, therefore we will label them as such and deem that label as high functioning, despite what the person is actually feeling or going through. That's what high functioning means. High functioning autism originates from the idea that there is a severe form of autism and a not severe form of autism. Like there is a linear spectrum, as in little bit autistic, which would be high functioning, and very autistic, which is low functioning. It also originates from the term Asperger's. This term was coined by the Austrian doctor Hans Asperger, who was a Nazi in World War II who murdered disabled children. And the ones that he deemed a little bit more worthy to keep, he deemed them as high functioning or Asperger's syndrome. So don't use it. Don't use the word, it's a little bit gross, isn't it? Again, I have an entire video on Hans Asperger, high functioning and low functioning labels, so if you guys want to see them, again, click around here or the link down in my bio. What does going non-verbal feel like? It feels like you are a stuck record. It feels like you are trying to swim through sticky, gross molasses, or trying to run when your shoes weigh 1,000,000 kilos. You entirely feel stuck. You know the words and you know how to express them, but you physically, mentally, emotionally cannot. It's like there's a block and no one else can see it except for you. The strength and energy it takes for my body and for my mind to produce one singular word is close to impossible. My body has shut down, it's scary, it's draining, and it happens because I've been doing too much or feeling too much for too long. This is something that's really common that happens to autistic people trying to live and survive in a neurotypical world. It's scary, it's draining, it's so tiring, and it happens to so many of us because we've been trying to fight the survival of being neurodivergent in a neurotypical world for too long. Is it rude to assume that someone's autistic? The only reason that it would be rude to assume that someone is autistic is because of this idea that we have that autism is immediately a negative thing when it's not. Now obviously this doesn't mean going around and saying to absolutely everyone, hey, you're autistic, your son is autistic, your daughter's autistic. Don't do an Oprah Winfrey and go, everyone's autistic. But I don't think the idea that we have of you're not allowed to tell someone that they're autistic, you're not allowed to hint that someone's child might be autistic. A teacher isn't allowed to say to a parent, hey, I work with your child for 6 hours a day for 5 days a week, and they're there is autistic tendencies there, maybe get them tested. Or a mum potentially hiding an autism diagnosis from a child's father because the idea of autism is so terrifying. That doesn't make any sense to me. Being autistic is not a bad thing, and assuming that someone is autistic also should not inherently be a bad thing. However, the reason that we associate the term autism with bad is because if someone says to you, I think your child is autistic, we immediately go to these media-based stereotypes of what autism is. They think my child is autistic. That means they think my child is like Sheldon Cooper. That means they think my child is like Rain Man. That means that they think my child is like all of these horrible news articles that we have learned and heard about autism. That is why it is rude to assume that someone is autistic, because of other people's perception of what autism is. However, if we change that perception and simply see it as another trait, another personality, another thing that a human being can be, then it doesn't become rude, it simply becomes factual. However, we are currently, unfortunately, living in a world where that idea of autism is still the mainstream idea of what it is. So because of that, people's assumptions of what autism is isn't actually what autism is. So you might look at someone and go, because of the stereotype knowledge that I have in autism, despite it not actually being any real knowledge of autism, that person is autistic. That is when it becomes rude. If you genuinely have a set and solid understanding of what autism actually is and how it can present, then it's a different story. Can non-autistic people stim? Not only can they stim, they do stim. Every single one of you, every single person in the history of the entire universe stims, and I can almost guarantee stims daily. Stimming is merely moving our body in a way that is grounding and comforting. Clicking a pen is stimming, playing with your hair is stimming, tapping your leg is stimming. It all counts as stimming. We do it to ground ourselves, we do it when we're stressed, when we're anxious, when we're bored. It's simply there, and it's simply in all of us. Everybody stims. That should be a t-shirt. Yes, stay tuned. Why do you say that functioning labels don't exist? Because they don't. Functioning labels deny support, deny agency, and push us into labels that plain and simply do not exist. And the entire idea of it is just to appease the neurotypical people that cannot make sense of our brains. It doesn't actually help us or benefit us in any way possible. It never has, and it never will, so there is no reason for it. One of the biggest reasons why this is complete another hogwash and why we need to completely disappear it from our minds, not only because of the previous Nazi terminology that I was talking about previously, but because of the fact that an autistic person's level of functioning is going to fluctuate throughout their day, throughout their week, throughout their entire lives. Functioning levels do not exist. Scientifically, they cannot exist. Again, if you guys would like to see a video all about functioning labels, you can find it somewhere around here or once again down in the bio. Man, this entire video is just a big self-promo. Hell yeah. Given the option to completely erase your autism, would you? Absolutely not. I am who I am because I'm autistic, and I wouldn't change that for the world. Autism is beautiful, and despite the struggles that I have because of it, I so greatly believe that the benefits that I have, that the strengths that I have because of being autistic so far outweigh these issues. The life I have, the strength I have, the hobbies I have, the passions I have because I'm autistic. And once again, is why the label of person with autism rather than autistic person just doesn't make any sense to me. Autism is something that I carry around like a bag. It's a crucial key part of who I am. It makes me me, and I love that about me. Plus, neurotypicals are weird. Does autism mean it's hard to get an education? It's not difficult because of being autistic itself. I have an incredibly high IQ, not that that's a measure of intelligence whatsoever, and I absolutely loved and continue to love learning new things. When I was really, really young, I think maybe about the age of 4 or 5, my Christmas present was a stack of encyclopedias, and I read through those encyclopedias within 6 months and learned absolutely everything about everything, and would spill these facts to absolutely anyone who would or would not listen. I loved learning. I still love learning. So education, because of being autistic, isn't necessarily the issue. The issue is becoming educated within our current education system. Our education system is built for a specific type of brain, a specific type of person, a specific type of student, something that most autistic people can never be and never achieve. Therefore, we're ostracized, we can't be taught properly, and we're left out. Meaning then that education does become a very, very large issue for autistic people. Many, many autistic people never finishing school and never continuing on to further work or education. Not because of our intelligence, but because of the education system failing us. Is everyone a little bit autistic? No, everyone is not a little bit autistic, just like not everyone is a little bit Asian, or just like everyone is not a little bit blind, just like not everyone is a little bit amputee. Everyone is not a little bit autistic. By trying to shove yourself in our identity, you are completely invalidating everything that we have fought for and achieved. And you are trying to cover that invalidation with your false attempts of support. Yes, many people have the traits of autism, but that doesn't for a second mean that you are actually autistic. It goes back to the idea of autism being a linear line, as in some people are a little bit autistic, and if you are just on that line, then you are a little bit autistic, and if you're close to that line, then you're not autistic enough, but still kind of autistic, and then if you're on the other end of the line, you are very, very autistic. That line doesn't exist. Autism isn't linear, and if you're one of those people who's like, everyone's a little bit autistic, if you say that enough, Girl, you should go and get an autism test, because I got news for you. Is an autistic brain actually shaped differently? Some studies have suggested which autistic brains actually can be shaped slightly differently than a neurotypical brain. There's some evidence that suggests that autistic brains are more symmetrical and have slightly different structures, but it's not enough to prove an autism diagnosis. However, there is much more significant research that showcases us that autistic brains are wired and connected differently to a neurotypical brain, meaning potentially there will be a time when autism could be diagnosed through a CAT scan or through similar things. Meaning, maybe when I got my CAT scan, instead of saying, yep, she was not kicked by a horse, they could have just straight away gone, there you go, it's an autistic. How do you get autism? I was just born with it. Just lucky. Just as I was born a girl, just as I was born with brown hair, just as I was born Australian, just as I was born the person that I am, I was also born as autistic. Nothing can make you autistic. Nothing in the entire world can cause autism. There was a lot of questions that I received as well saying that they weren't autistic until a certain age, and how does that work? You have always been autistic. The only thing is that you were diagnosed or that your symptoms started to show at a specific age. That doesn't mean that you weren't always autistic. It just means that we were able to see it at a specific time. I met a man a while ago who was 85 years old when he got diagnosed as autistic. He didn't just get autism as an 85-year-old, he had always been autistic for 85 years. He just recognized it then. If you're autistic, you always have been autistic and you always will be autistic. Nothing changes that. So there you have it. There are some of your questions answered about autism. I hope this answered some of you guys' questions, and if it didn't, I would love to continue doing this series. So if you do have more, keep an eye out on my Instagram because I will be asking the question again soon. If in the meantime you do have any further questions about autism, I'm always making videos about autism. I have been making videos about autism since I was 18 years old, so there was every chance that I've already answered it. Like I said, I will be including some of my videos down in the bio below, so make sure you guys go and check them out and learn some more about autism. I hope you guys are staying kind to yourself. I hope you guys are staying kind to others. I hope you guys are staying hydrated, and I hope you guys are wearing your masks because I would very much like to get out of this lockdown. Thank you. I love you guys so much. Look after yourselves, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.
Just be me.